Welcome to one of the most listened to music news podcasts in the world, SGNP, with your host, Darren Sutherland. Join us as we talk with industry leaders, artists, and entertainers about their faith, family, and careers. This is information you will not find anywhere else on radio, web, or in a magazine, but only firsthand on SGNP.
Of sin, He lifted me with a love that knows no end. He took my hand, pulled me out of the sinking sand, gave me a life that never ends. I'm so glad that Jesus came and lifted me. Fighting alone of the battle, struggling through each day, searching for means of survival, but none was on the way. Then the merciful hands of Jesus came beckoning from above. The moment that I trusted Him, He filled me with His love. He lifted me out of the lonely depths of sin. He lifted me with a love that knows no end. He took my hand, pulled me out of the sinking sand, gave me life that never ends. I'm so glad that Jesus came and lifted me. Looking back over the wonders I've seen along the way, I've been touched by His power, I've been blessed in many ways, but nothing will ever compare to the blessings I received. That day my name was added to the list of the redeemed. He lifted me out of the lonely depths of sin. He lifted me with a love that knows no end. He took my hand, pulled me out of the sinking sand, gave me life that never ends. I'm so glad that Jesus came and lifted me. He lifted me out of the lonely depths of sin.
Welcome once again to Southern Gospel News Podcast. Darren Sutherland and my co-host, he's been on the road and he's been running up and down the hills and the byways of life, dodging the pandemic, eating at Cracker Barrels and Piccadillys and truck stops and eating gasoline, hot dogs, and not getting his workouts in and probably not playing as much golf as he wants to. He's the Southern Gospel Music lead singer extraordinaire, Arthur Rice of the Kingdom Heirs. Arthur, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. How's everything with you?
You know what, man? It's good. It's good. I told you a couple of weeks ago that I was going to come see you in North Augusta, and then I didn't show up. And I don't know if you look for me or not, but it's probably a big crowd regardless out there at CT's church when you're out there.
I look for you.
Well, I'm coming to see you Saturday because you're going to be in my back door.
Yeah, we kind of booked that. That was kind of a last minute.
Yeah, and when that came up, quite frankly, not that you guys aren't worth the 2-hour drive to go here, I said, you know what, he's going to be right up the street from me. And Robert York's a great promoter here in the Metro Atlanta area, and I've known Robert for 30 years, and I said, I kind of need to go up there and back up Robert and see the Kingdom Heirs when they bring them, because I kept saying to Robert, you bring in all these other folks. Why don't you bring the Kingdom Heirs in? I mean, you only go to Dollywood and see them about every other week, it seems like. That's what old people do.
We've been trying to work with Robert the past several years, and we just never could get a date to work out. And so this year it worked out. And so we're excited about it. We're excited about being there.
Well, we took a break for a couple of weeks, and let me tell our listeners why. And thank you to everybody that sent me texts and emails and Facebook messages and where's SGNP? Where'd you go? Well, quite frankly, folks, we had to hire a new producer here at the office. Our old producer left. We were without a producer for a couple of weeks. You know, with SGNP, this is more, quite frankly, of a hobby and a love affair with gospel music that we have. And we have other things that pay the bills, Arthur. And that's just, you know, we got to do that. I mean, let's just face it. I mean, Arthur's on the road, so his schedule is a little bit tighter now than it would be normally at Dollywood. So Arthur, how is going down the road? How is that lifestyle right now? What are you thinking? What's going on?
You know, it's been good. It's different. You know, we're not working as many dates as we normally would. But the ones that we're, you know, I've been very pleased. You know, I told the guys when we left out on our first trip, I thought, man, I said, honestly, I have no clue. First time in my life, I have no clue if anybody's going to show up. I don't know. Yeah. You know, being in ministry for a long time, you know, you can go to a church and you know that people are going to come just because they're used to going to church. It doesn't matter if they like you or not. You know, they're going to come just because they're used to going to church. But man, you know, with this coming out of this pandemic thing, and we honestly didn't know if anybody would show up. And it's been great. It hadn't been normal, but it's been great. And I hate that phrase, new normal. Because I hope that's not it. But
tell the truth, though, Arthur. You're not having to hug all the people you once had a hug at this point.
Well, yeah. You know, I kind of just, I've kind of, you know, I stay away from it, but as much as possible. But you know what? I'm not worried about it. If you know, somebody said, well, you know, what if you get COVID? Well, you know, I'll be a Christian with COVID. You know what I mean? And
I got
like, you know, for me, I mean, it's like, what's the worst that could happen? Worst thing that could happen would be the best thing could ever happen for you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And, you know, we're all so scared of it. And it's just, I'm telling you, it's out to get us all. Yeah. And sometimes it's not really a matter of, are you going to get it? It's just a matter of when you're going to get it.
How's it feel to leave the road and have to come back on Monday and Tuesday and do all your office work and call the radio stations and all that kind of fun stuff?
It's been fun. We kind of know that's kind of what this schedule is. This time of year, and
so when you back at Dollywood? When you back at Dollywood?
We start back March the 13th, Lord willing, and excited about that. It's kind of, you know, we're still kind of in this COVID schedule, so it's not as full as we normally would be. I don't know our schedule yet, but I think we're going to be doing like we were last year, 4 days a week for right now until, you know, kind of things open back up. Hopefully in the next couple of months, you know, by the time we get to summer, you know, hopefully we'll kind of be back into a kind of a normal schedule, and we'll see how that goes.
The only loaded question I'm going to throw your way this morning is this, and this is for our classic gospel music folks that listen every week. I want to know, because you probably would know more than anybody else in the world, or one of the ones that would know, how would Jim Hamill react to COVID if he was working this day and time from the stage, as energetic as he was, and looking at the crowds and playing with the crowds, and just what would Hamill think of all this? What would he have to say?
Probably the same thing me. It's just so weird. It's just so different. Of course, most of the churches that we're working, you know, are you know, they do the mask coming in, and once they get set down, you know, they take the mask off, and so. But we have worked somewhere, you know, they wear the mask the whole time, and you can tell the difference between the audience. You know, anytime, you know, that was what I was struggling with last year. Was anytime, you know, you cover somebody's face, they're going to be more reserved, they're not into it, and then you separate them from each other. You know, the energy level in an audience kind of spreads. know, you have some that are really into it. And when you're sitting close to them, it spreads, it kind of jumps over onto you, you know, and so you can kind of get into it. When you're separated by 6 feet and a pew or whatever, that energy doesn't translate. And so it's different. And, you know, I've kind of, you know, you spend your life looking at people, watching people, trying to figure out, okay, where do they, you know, where you kind of getting their reaction over where you want the program to go. What do they, you know, what do they need? What do they need? And you can't see that, and it's different, man. It's just really different. And you just have to, you know, you just have to really just depend on the Lord to guide you in the direction that you need to go, and hopefully you hit it. Sometimes you don't.
There you go. Well, we know God is good, and he's been good to the Kingdom Heirs, and so many other groups out there traveling up and down the roads, and we've seen the reports on social media and through the internet in different ways. And we'll have some of those groups and some of those individuals coming up in future weeks. We're back ready to rock and roll on SGNP week after week, so we can bring you the best in gospel music and talk to folks about how gospel music has impacted not only their lives, but their careers, their ministries, and so much more. You can go back and listen to old shows from Southern Gospel Music. Arthur, do you believe can you realize we've done well over 100 shows, and we've talked to everybody from Mark Trammell to who haven't we talked to is the question. I mean, lately Steve Brown, great interview. C.T. Townsend, great interview. You know, Gary Gentry with Premier, great interview. And today is no exception. And if you're in the North Carolina, Virginia, Tennessee areas, you're going to know this voice. Yeah. If you're not in those areas, but you love Southern gospel and you listen to it on a stream, he's been with one of the best stations, if not one of the best program stations in America. And we'll bring him on, and he's a personal friend of mine. Matter of fact, I worked with him, and we'll tell that story, Arthur, 15, 16 years ago. And we'll have some, but Daniel Britt is going to be with us. Daniel, the host of JoyFM's morning show, has been for the past 14 years. We'll let him tell what's going on in his career and what's going on there in just 1 minute when we come back from the break. But hey, if you hadn't checked us out on Facebook, be one of our 17,000 followers. Let's get that up to 18,000 in March. Can we do that? We just need another 1,000 of you to share it with your friends and family. You can check us out on Facebook. You can check us out on Twitter. You can check us out on Instagram, and we'll be happy to help you if you need that and find out more information about us. When we started this, Arthur, a lot of people said, well, you know, old people don't understand what podcasts are. Well, 250,000 downloads later, I think they're finding out a little bit about us, Arthur. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, even in months like January, we do 2 shows. And I mean, we get, I mean, people love what we've done, and you can just hear some great information. Today's no exception, though, by the way. Stick around. We'll be right back after this break. Daniel Britt's on his way to SGNP.
Hey, guys, this is Mike Rigglesworth from the Caffeinated Christian Podcast. We want to let you know that the Caffeinated Christian is about providing thoughtful and charitable conversations around pressing cultural issues and personal stories, all explored through the lens of a Christian worldview. The topics we talk about range from human sexuality to racial injustice. We even get into topics such as aliens. The guys over here at the Caffeinated Christian regularly bring in guests that encourage listeners to think hard, which will challenge or perhaps even change their worldview. Like and subscribe to the Caffeinated Christian Podcasts wherever you download your podcast today.
Hey, this is Darren, and I'm here for my buddy Mike Lindell and My Pillow. That's right, My Pillow. I got to tell you a little secret, and this is a true story. The other day I'm laying in the bed, I looked at Mary and I said, I'm going to get me some new pillows today. She said, what do you need with new pillows? You got them. I said, I got one that's decent, and I didn't know which one it was. I mean, I knew which one it was, and I pulled the cover off of it, and it was only My Pillow. The rest of them were these ones that we bought from TJ Maxx or Target or Walmart or somewhere that just had worn out their welcome. And you know what, guys? I feel like I needed new pillows. And she said, well, why don't you call My Pillow, because you like the one you got there, and tell them what you're looking for, and they'll help you out. You know what I called, and guess what? They helped me out. They asked me what size I was. They asked me how I slept. Did I sleep on my back or on my side or on my stomach? What felt right? Feathers or, blah, 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 foam. They asked me all these questions. More questions than I ever dreamed about a pillow, and I got my new My Pillow in the mail, and I've slept right. You want that change in your life? It's real simple. 1-800-338-2330. 1-800-338-2330. Use the code word SGNP. That's right, the code word SGNP. And tell them you heard about this special offer. And when you use that code, you'll get a great discount from the folks at My Pillow. I use My Pillow. You should too. 1-800-338-2330. Use the code SGNP. My Pillow, the official pillow and sleep provider of Southern Gospel News Podcast. And welcome back to SGNP. Darren Sutherland, my co-host Arthur Rice, and on the line with us, I think he's in Winston-Salem, Daniel Britt. Daniel, you up in Winston-Salem right now?
Yes, I have fallen in love with this city, but most people around the country hear Winston-Salem, they think cigarette. But it's much more than tobacco.
North Carolina, that's all we do, man.
That's right. Exactly. Hey, it's good to be with you guys.
Good to be with you. Hey, I got one question before we start, and I told you I was not going to give you any gotcha questions, okay? But what took you so long to call me back? I mean, we've been personal friends, and when I say personal friends, I mean, I've known Daniel since, you're 18, 19 years old when we started working together. I mean, you were young, okay? And I was young in the industry, and you and I, and a lot of people don't know this, and I'm going to tell this story, was doing a AM gospel station in downtown Atlanta on the flip side of one of contemporary Christian music's largest stations in America, 104.7 The Fish.
Yeah.
And we were, Daniel, for lack of a better word, we were starting to hit some real numbers there toward the end, and before they blew up the station and turned it into a news talk. But we had some good times, did we not?
We did, and man, that was a blast. That was around the time that I was getting married, and so I still am married to Megan. But that was an important time in my life because I mean, to be honest, that was the second job that I'd ever had. First place I ever worked straight out of middle school, almost. I was 14. I stayed there for 6 years.
Yeah.
So then to move into Atlanta, not only. You got to understand, I grew up in Warner Robins, Georgia. And I know this is not the mindset of a lot of people these days, even in Warner Robins. I thought Warner Robins was the perfect town. It was not too big, not too small. A lot of great gospel singings at that Civic Center in Warner Robins with the red velvet curtains and the Inspirations recorded a live album there back in the day. But we never went to Atlanta unless it was an extremely special occasion. I was always told, oh, that's the big city. You had to get your ducks in a row to go to Atlanta. And it was like twice a year we might go see a Braves game or something. So to live and work in Atlanta always was a mystique to me. And so I learned the ropes of driving Peachtree.
Yeah.
I learned, big city life, I guess you'd say, by living just a few miles from Buckhead. And so that was fun. It was a fun time. And then running with you, this gospel thing this was a big moment in the early 2000s. The gospel music was humming on all cylinders and a lot of exciting things happening. And they still are. I'm not saying those were the glory days and we've moved beyond that. But that was, for me, young kid, and to be there with such an organization, the largest Christian communications company in the world. So we had lots of resources behind us. Yeah. And that was fun too.
We had a great time, and we'll talk more about that later. But Daniel, for the past 14 years, Arthur's been pitching you songs. You've been running the morning show. You've been vice president of a great company. And I'll just let you tell what's going on in Daniel Britt's life, because I don't want to put words in your mouth. And you tell folks what's going on with Daniel Britt.
Well, there's no scandal, and we all love each other. And I'll just get out of it and tell that up front. That's, and in gospel music, you always have, I think, probably the most overused line in public press releases, PR statements is, well, I'm going to spend more time with my family. Mm-hmm. But if you think back over this last year, a lot of us got sent home during the pandemic, safer at home, and spent a whole lot more time with my family than I probably ever have, just because we couldn't go anywhere and you're stuck there. Mm-hmm. And I said, we actually found out we kind of liked each other. So that's not been the case for everybody. I know there's some really opposite stories that came out of that, but without making it too sugary sweet, I got kids who, as anybody who has kids, old people always say they grow in like weeds. They'll be out of the house before you know it, and cherish these moments, even though they may be tiring. And that's kind of the wake up call I've been getting. Is I've got a kid that's teenager now. It's hard to believe, and there's some things that we want to do, and so the opportunities the Lord has given me. While nothing real specific and nothing that's like, oh, well, that's the reason he left. Most people are still kind of scratching their head. I think it's a big leap of faith. And if I could get out in front and say this, I have always been a confident person, especially as it relates to my career.
Yeah.
I'm talking about a kid. I'm talking about like elementary age. I've always told people what my plan for my career was. And at one point it was even working at this local TV station, moving to that bigger market, and eventually sitting at CBS in New York, kicking Dan Rather out of his anchor chair. I mean, that's the line I used to give people as a kid. So I've always been very certain and sure. And I can't help but think that maybe this is a time in my life when the Lord is saying, just take a step of faith, for crying out loud. Do something where you don't know the outcome. That might be good for you. So Here I am. That's kind of what's happening.
Well, let's face it. You are taking a step of faith because you're arguably anchoring the morning show of one of the largest Southern gospel FM radio groups in the country. I mean, you're across the you're in the heartbeat of North Carolina when it comes to Southern gospel music there in Winston-Salem. You're not in a major market like Atlanta or New York, but for the genre of music you play, you're at the pinnacle. I mean, quite frankly. So take it. Well, I mean, it's not like you can go to New York and jump on a Southern gospel station, or LA or Chicago. I mean, so you are taking a leap of faith.
I am, and I'll make it clear, I'm not setting out to start my own radio station. I'm not setting out to do any kind of competition like that. I'm a big cheerleader of JoyFM, and I think I can say it, and if people will believe me, I know that probably sounds like that's hard to believe, but if I can say this, I said this when I came. The station was 10 years old, and I said on my radar, JoyFM was the best thing to hit Southern gospel in the radio world. And I could say that as the new guy who just came, knowing that I had no part of that. So I was standing on some big, broad shoulders. And now all these years later, it may sound self-serving to say I'm leaving a great station because I've been shepherding for 14 years. But I got to say, this thing has grown to about 33 stations, including Virginia Beach, Virginia, Charlotte, North Carolina, Tri-Cities of Tennessee, 6 states from Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and West Virginia. And yes, the streaming, people who live outside of that geographic area are listening all around the world. And I know you've got numbers to prove that as well. People are hungry for this music in a lot of markets where there is no local station, or where maybe even the Kingdom Airs bus hardly ever touches. You know, there's parts of the country where you would be hard pressed to find a gospel singing this Friday night or any Friday night in any year in the past 10. Just because it's not the hotbed, it's not the deep South, or it's not the near the highways where the groups travel. But there is a hunger out there, and I think that there will always be a place for this music that I grew up on and love, and that's my collision. I love broadcasting and radio and TV type stuff, but I also love Southern gospel, and those two, I've been blessed to say those two have collided, and my world has been involving those passions of mine.
Arthur, what you got?
Yeah, and even what I like about it is we've lost so many of our local stations that used to play Southern gospel, and you guys kind of come in there and in those places. In fact, Darren and I were talking about the day in Georgia. We were supposed to work for JoyFM this coming Saturday down in Greenville, and Greenville was always a hot spot for great Southern gospel music, but it kind of fell off over the years, and you guys came in there and filled that spot. And so man, kudos to y'all. I mean, it was just it's been great.
I don't know if you know this, Arthur, but when the pandemic set in, and we would do, and this is nothing compared to what you artists do, but as from a radio station point of view, there were a few years ago, we were doing 90 to 95 events a year, and we're a radio station. We don't have a bus, so 90 to 95 a year. And so to put that in perspective, you were the last artist that I have laid eyes on in person and seeing the Kingdom Airs. It was Lancaster, South Carolina, January 2020.
Yeah.
And I don't think we had heard much about the word coronavirus. I don't know if I could have told you what that was in January 2020, and no clue that would have been the last time I stepped on a stage to introduce a group, as an MC, and that was Kingdom Airs.
Yeah. Daniel, you've been in a lot of different places. You've done a lot of different things as a young man. In the Southern gospel world, you've reached, I would say, you're one of the let me just say this. There was Paul Heil in my mind. Then there's Daniel Britt. Okay. And I say that with all due respect. Actually, when Mr. Heil passed, I said to Arthur, and Arthur remembers this comment. I said, Daniel Britt, if they're going to continue that job, Sheila ought to get with Daniel and do that job if that's what the Lord intends to happen. Arthur, I know you remember that conversation. Yeah. But in your time on the air, in your time in concerts, when is one of those times that you just had to pinch yourself and say, man, the Lord has allowed me to do this. I can't believe I'm here, or I can't believe I'm introducing these folks. I can't believe I'm filling in. I can't believe I'm here. Yeah. When's that? What's the first moment that comes to your mind?
Well, if you want about first, and it was early on, and it's during my time with SiriusXM, I think I came out of my shell as an interviewer. I didn't know I was that good at interviewing until I just started sitting down talking to people, and then people said really nice things about me, and I thought, well, this wasn't a skill that I honed, but praise the Lord. But you go back to when I was probably 14. I'd grown up going to these concerts, but I bought a ticket, or my grandparents bought a ticket just like anybody else. But when I was 14, I kind of got to scratching my head. Well, radio, you get a little bit different access to the artist, right? And so I found out how to go through a backstage door instead of through the front door. And I remember being in Warner Robins, and the Happy Goodmans were singing with the Dixie Echoes that night. And I think it was the Cannonland Boys out of Jacksonville, Florida. And I remember when Howard Vestal and Johnny Minnick came down the freight elevator. Now, these freight elevators don't open, vertically. They open horizontally. Okay. And it was dark back there. And I just remember this was a pinch me moment. You could hear this machine elevator making all kind of noise. And then when the elevator sort of split open, there was like one single light bulb in the back of the elevator, which made a perfect silhouette of the three Goodmans, Johnny, Howard, and Vestal. And I looked to my left and my right, and I'm the only guy back here. So this is it felt like a holy moment, like, oh my goodness. And of course I am way. Well, what do? I wasn't interviewing people at this point. I think I brought a microphone with me, and I thought at best I could get them to say, hi, you're listening to radio station name. Well, I just stood over in the corner and I didn't say a peep. And Darren doesn't believe this because I haven't shut up since, but I couldn't say anything. But Vestal came over to me and she put her arm around me and she said, darling, are you a DJ? And is there anything I can do for you? And she was so kind, and it kind of brought me out of my shell, but I'll never forget that moment. And that was a pinch me moment for sure.
Nice. Daniel, one of the pinch me moments I've had, and I'll relate this to you. And you and I were together, and it was the first time they did the Gaither Homecoming in sold out Phillips Arena. And you and I got to get on stage before. And Arthur, this stage was in the round. So you know how those stages kind of work from being in Louisville, and you know what it's like to be in a house of 16,000 or so. And all I remember from that day was they told us, welcome everybody, but do not introduce Bill Gaither. Bill Gaither goes with no introduction. And that's all I remember. They said, tell about the radio station. You remember that night in particular?
I do. I think you and I kind of had a banter. Oh yeah, I remember it.
Yeah.
We were going to kind of list through some of our core artists. If you like, the Hoppers, and I'll say the Kingdom Airs, and you say Gold City, and I'll say Brian Free and Shirt. We were going to do that, and I think we pulled it off. It is a little nerve wracking when you go from a radio studio where there's nobody in the room to a room of 16,000, same microphone, but a totally different environment for a radio person.
No doubt. Arthur, let me ask you this. As we're talking to Daniel, you get the ability, and you don't have to name names, but you get the ability to interact with some of the best Christian music DJs in the world. And then you get the ability to interact with some that you wonder how they even have sense to turn the signal on. Okay.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm talking about. How refreshing is it for artists like yourself when you see someone with the professionalism of Daniel that is putting your music up against rock, country, contemporary, black gospel, urban, and all other formats of music? How refreshing is it when you get in that market and you can flip that radio station on?
Well, it really is, because, so many, especially over the years, so many times our music is kind of put on the back shelf. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild, and to hear it legitimized by some great DJs, it just makes it so refreshing, because we know the amount of time and work that we put into our craft of what we do and what we want to present to people. We know how much effort we put into that, and then when it goes out and it's not done well, you just rub your eyes and shake your head. But when it's done great, man, it just feels so good, and it just really feels refreshing. You feel like you're this is what we see and how we want our music presented, and it's so great to see it.
You mentioned that. I grew up, and I won't name the station, but there was a station that I remember even as a young guy listening to, an FM station, and I guess you would say it was in stereo, because you could be in your car and the right side of the car was louder than the left side of the car. And no matter what car you get in, it was that way. And in that right side, there would be a hum that would not be present in the left speaker. And then you'd get the guy on the radio, and it would be in the summertime in Georgia, and he'd have the window to the studio open, and you could literally hear, almost like surround sound, you could hear a lawnmower getting closer to the studio window, and he needed to talk louder, and then it would trail away. And he finally said, "Let me shut this window." And I just thought, well, I think we could be more professional than that. Now, I'll say on the other side that you can get too professional that you lose a connection point. And I've been guilty of that. I think that I've probably ridden so hard on it's got to be slick and tight and scripted, and it's got to be so professional that then you don't come across as a real human. And to be honest, that's where I've had to find coaching, is to be a little bit, this comes natural for Darren. If something walked into the room right now, I think Darren would run with it. He wouldn't shoo it away and say, "Be quiet, I'm in a radio show." He'd probably welcome the interruption, and he'd go with that. And I admire that, because sometimes I'm a little too buttoned up.
Well, that is part of our music. Our music is meant to be down to earth, and it's it's shoe leather gospel, and that's how we want to communicate. And there is, you're exactly right. There's a fine line. There was a time in there that sometimes I felt like, because of our position of where and the amount of time that we perform, it gets pretty slick over a few months. And then some of the places that we go into, it just felt like, maybe we're just a little bit too slick. So I know exactly, I get exactly what you're saying. And you're right. You have to kind of play that, play that field. And it's been a learning process for me since I've been emceeing, and too, because you kind of have to feel, and that's where I go back to say, not being able to see the people's face makes it very difficult to do that. And I can imagine it'd be very difficult for a DJ to never see anybody's face, talking to a microphone all day long.
Yeah.
It could be, I can understand that.
It's fun. Daniel, one thing, and I guarantee you, your listeners in Carolina and Virginia, West Virginia and Tennessee and all over the country don't know this about you, but I'm going to bring up real quick. Arthur, it was a week, I think it was a month before Daniel got married. I was a bivocational minister of music when I was also a DJ at the radio station, okay? I did an afternoon show. Daniel did the drive home show, and we were having revival at our church, and I led the music, and our pianist had to go out of town the piano player don't leave a church during revival. You know what I'm saying? Especially in a Baptist church, okay?
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there sweating, and I said, man, I got to have somebody play the piano. And Daniel said, I can play the piano. Okay. Now, Arthur, you know this from being a musician yourself. Anytime you've never heard somebody and somebody volunteers, the first thing, and they're a friend, the first thing you say is, okay, because you're trying to be a nice Baptist and, just agree and shake your head and say, yeah, brother, yeah, thank you, come help me, And then you walk away and you say, have I spoke too quickly? Is this person going to embarrass me to death? You know what I'm talking about, don't you, Arthur? Am I lying? It's happened to you, okay? You've had more tenor singers offer their services in the past 3 weeks than you've had in the past 30 years, okay?
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So Daniel said, okay. So I said, all right, man, come on. I was in a bind. Arthur, this is no joke. I had some jam up musicians, okay? Because my love for country music. I pulled my musicians out of nightclubs, okay? And they could slam. Daniel comes over there to the church. We're at Little Baptist Church, got about 50 people in the choir. He says, what parts do y'all do? I said, Daniel, they all sing lead, man. Just we all do Magruder's type singing. We just draw back and let her fly. So Daniel says, I got this. Arthur, I kid you not, okay? He may not be Anthony Berger, but he ain't that many steps below. Daniel Britt can tear a piano up. Daniel, how much you playing the piano now, by the way, for folks that don't know?
I'm not doing a whole lot, but now I'll have some more time on my hands if you need somebody. Little trivia, I did play for the Canaan Land Boys. I mentioned them. I met them that night that I met the Goodmans, and I played for about probably a year or so when I was 17 years old, and that was a fun experience. We went out west into Colorado and New Mexico and did a tour out there. And but I am teaching my kids, so that's a whole other level of patience when you're trying to teach your kids how to do something right, whether they want to or not. That's right.
So Arthur, here's what you got to do next time you're with Daniel and he's emceeing a concert. Okay.
Yeah.
Somewhere within the concert, you got to kick your piano player off the bench and make Daniel come play one for you.
Absolutely. That's great.
And then, Daniel, do you remember this? This is the next time. Arthur, this is honest, good truth. We were at a defunct water park. Somebody did a remote at a defunct water park, okay? And they said, Darren, you lead the singing and play the bass. And I'm not that great at playing the bass. I can hit 4 chords, okay? And we're standing out at a water park playing electric bass, and Daniel's on a keyboard. I mean, that was some fun times.
I mean, you Kingdom Airs, you probably done those cruises, but that's got to be a little bit different environment to be on a deck and people, maybe in some bathing suits or whatnot. That was different. That was doing gospel music as radio guys. First of all, radio guys singing and playing with people running around in bathing suits eating ice cream. It was bizarre.
Yeah. I mean, I was trying to do it with my eyes closed because I'm an introvert anyway. So I didn't want to be out there in that setting with all that sinful nature. Because God, God don't let women and girls go into men and women in the swimming pool at the same time. That's what mixed bathing. I was raised. Arthur, was you raised with mixed bathing or not? I mean, was that part of your growing up?
Oh no, yeah, that was a taboo.
That's right. I mean,
I had forgotten about that story.
Think about that this day and time. we live in a world where if somebody said mixed bathing, you're going to be in trouble, people would look at us like we were crazy. They really would. How did we get to this point? We're talking to Daniel Britt, morning show DJ with JoyFM past 14 years. Daniel's moving on, doing some stuff on his own. Daniel, you know, as a fan, who's your favorites? Who does Daniel Britt listen to? And has your taste changed over the years? Have you seen your likes? Because I know we love all the artists and we love all the groups, but we all go through periods where we listen to different people. I'll give you an example, and you'll laugh when I tell you this, Daniel. Back in the day when you and I were together, I would say to Daniel, I ain't playing that Primitive mess. It sounds like, you know, we need upbeat. Now I find myself listening to the Primitive on a daily basis. You follow what I'm saying? Have you seen yourself mature in this and grow and learn to appreciate different art forms in different ways?
Yes. And so the groups I grew up listening to, Inspirations, Cathedrals, Spencers, Gold City, Hoppers, maybe Florida Boys, those were the groups that came to town. And so I did not grow up going to concerts with the Goodmans or the Hemphills and groups like that, or the Hensons even. And so I discovered some of these groups later. And even this weekend, I got caught up on a Henson tune, and I bet I played that thing probably 4 times. And you know, and so you go back. There's obviously, we can talk about the modern groups of the day, but I find myself going back and appreciating, almost maybe studying some of those old, and you talk about the Kingsmen. I mean, that energy that they had and that they could create, which felt like almost out of nothing. Like they just showed up and then just like, boom, they made a cake right in front of your eyes. They had all the ingredients and it just came together. I was like, how did that happen? You know? And so going back and studying, and then you have like, you go way back and you talk about the really early trendsetters. I know it sounds different, but you have to, and you know, I'm not an old guy, so I have to take my mind on this journey and like, just imagine what life was like then, traveling in a car instead of a nice air conditioned bus, you know, and dealing with one microphone and we would probably hardly call it a PA system, but whatever, you know, and just realizing, you know, all that was going on. I've watched some of these documentaries that have been put out for country music and stuff like that. And so my mind watches that and says, okay, but what was happening in the gospel world during that? And so, yeah, I don't know if I gave you a very specific answer. There's not hardly any group that I won't listen to or appreciate through the years, because I think you can take whatever style that you might be more partial to, and you could probably find a gospel version of that would scratch that itch. You know, mountain bluegrass, more of a classic, more of a Couriers, you know, kind of a thing if you wanted to go that. And I think that's the beauty of it is, if you get bored listening to gospel music, you haven't dug deep enough.
Well, one thing that Arthur and I have found doing this show over the past 2.5 years is the impact gospel music has on other art forms of music as well as other ministries that people never realize that they have. You know, Arthur, I'll take, you remember our interview with T. Graham Brown and how T talked about, you know, how gospel music impacted his career and his life. And so many have grown up singing gospel music. I know back in the day, I did an interview once with Mickey Gilley, and Mickey talked, Daniel, you may remember this. We were at GKA when I did that interview with Mickey Gilley, and he talked about gospel was what it was. And I never will forget talking to Mickey, and I asked him the question, who was the most talented between you 3 cousins, Jimmy, Mickey, and Jerry Lee Lewis? And he said, Jimmy by far. And that just shocked me. Here's a guy that's made millions of dollars owning a, lack of a better word, what my grandmama would have called a beer joint, singing country music, but he learned it all playing gospel. So, you know, gospel music has an incredible impact. Look at Johnny Carson. Look at Elvis. I think us as gospel music people, and I preach this all the time, and some folks get upset with me for doing this, need to embrace some of those other outsiders a little bit more into the gospel music club, because they love it. They may not sing it every day, but they love it.
Yeah, our music is probably, without a doubt, more versatile than any genre of music out there.
Yeah.
Almost probably to a detriment to our industry, because we're so versatile and there's so many different styles.
Yes,
it's hard to you go, like I said, you go from Gaither to the primitive. That's a whole big swing right there, and how do you market that?
Yeah, you're right.
To one genre of people,
And you think about it this way: what two art forms of music has the heaviest bass influence? Okay, Southern gospel music and heavy metal. Think about it. Heavy metal is driving Ozzy Osbourne, boom, 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 boom. You know what I'm saying? Gospel music, George Johnson, Big Chief, whoever. I mean, it is like that. Hey, real quick, I know we're going to run short on time in just a second. And Daniel, we really appreciate you joining us. Daniel Britt with JoyFM. This Friday, we're going to release this podcast this week. It'll be released on Friday. That'll also be his last day on the air. So if you missed him on the air, just follow him at danielbritt.com. He'll let you know what's up with him. All right. You mentioned this a while ago. I'm going to put Arthur, I'm going to put you on, I'm going to ask you this question first. Then I'm going to ask Daniel this question and we'll go from there. Arthur, any time period. It doesn't matter when it is. Okay. It doesn't matter when the group sang, how they sang, what style they sang. You're at, let's say we're at the Greenville Municipal Auditorium, the old one, the one they tore down in Greenville, South Carolina, home of the Grand Ole Gospel Reunion, where all three of us have been before. You've got to put 4 groups on the stage that night. What 4 groups are Arthur Rice going to put on the stage that night?
Well, you got to put the Statesman on it, the old Statesman, the original Statesman. You got to put the mid-'70s Kingsman with Johnny and Squire. You got to have the Cathedrals. And I would say probably, Henson's, 80s, mid-'80s Henson's.
Who? 80s Kingdom Heirs? I'd take that.
No, Henson's.
Him? Okay. Daniel, what's your 4?
I would agree. The Cathedrals. I mean, there was just something special about that group, and I think I don't think anybody would ever argue with us on that. I have a love for the Happy Goodman family, and of course, and I have to say, I grew up with the vocal band, and I know that's a newer group, but I would say you could probably throw a dart at any year of the vocal band. I would like it. So I would say if it was the early 80s or the early 90s or the early 2000s or right now. And then I would throw this one out there because being from Georgia and then late in her life, having a good relationship with Eva Mae. And again, I didn't know the Lefevres in this day, but there was a season there with the Lefevres. That was a group that had a lot going on, a lot of variety even within the group, and was making some pretty good waves. And that would be when for selfish reasons, I would love to sit and watch that, watch them on a stage.
Well, guys, I'm going to give you my ADHD list, okay? I'm going to give you my list that I think would have just blown the roof off the place, okay? We would start off with the original God's Little People and the Perrys. I'm talking Randy, Denise, Libby, and Tracy, okay? We'd start off with those folks. Then out of nowhere, the man nobody in the business wanted to follow, and Arthur, I know you'll agree with this, you never wanted to follow him, Charles Johnson and the Revivers, with Daryl and Ricky playing at the same time. All righty. Am I true with that, Arthur? Nobody wanted to follow Charles.
Yeah.
All right. Number 3, it would have put such pressure with the Perrys coming out and then Charles Johnson. I've got to have Hamill and my buddy Arthur and your guys from Mississippi Live Kingsman coming out and coming in right behind Charles. Okay. And then because, I've got that country swag, and I love that country gospel swag, I want to put the pressure on Dwayne Allen and the Oak Ridge Boys to follow those 3 groups right there that night and and I want to sell a lot of tickets and sell that place out. So I want the Oaks to be there too. But that's my form. That's my form.
I tell you, somebody that could follow that is the Thrasher Brothers.
You're exactly right.
They could have followed that no problem at all.
Yeah. And our friend Tony Gore back in his day could have, a lot of people don't even know this, but Tony, I think, played the drums or something on that Charles Johnson and Revivers Let's Have Church. I mean, you could throw a lot of people in there. Arthur, we could throw our old friend Jeff Steele in his one of his early groups in on there. Or even, if you won't sing one or two songs, the Magruders could have done a great job. Daniel, we appreciate your time today, man. We appreciate everything you've done for gospel music. Yeah. Let me say
first
this.
First class.
Let me say this before we close. If you're a young DJ or if you're an old DJ and you want to learn your craft, watch Daniel Britt. He is as smooth. He's not only a great DJ, he's a great program director. He knows radio. He knows how it works, okay? And somebody that's like me has a hard time with it, being a freewheeling guy. But Daniel, I've learned a lot from you watching you, believe it or not. I've learned to be quiet when I need to be quiet. And sometimes, and I'm sure you could tell stories where I should have been quiet and I wasn't.
Well, same here.
But I want to thank you for the influence you've been, not only in my life, but in the gospel music and the countless millions you've touched over 14 years. And I'll secretly tell you this. I've always been jealous. I've always been jealous that you got to do what you got to do. But you know what? The Lord is good in everything he does. And he puts us all here for a reason and why we do it. And thank you for joining us today, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come on. And I've been saying this a lot. I sound like a broken record to myself, but any way that I can continue serving or helping or lifting up the name of Jesus through this gospel music we love, that's my passion. I don't have all the ducks in a row of what that's going to look like, but I just trust that God gave me this desire, and I don't think he's finished with it yet. So,
well, if the people from XM are listening, okay, go live music, put Daniel on the morning show, then put me and Arthur on in the afternoons. I think we could attract a few listeners. What do you think, Daniel?
That'd be a good gig.
Arthur, you think we could do that?
I'm in, yeah.
Hey, Daniel, I got to ask you this before we go, okay? Because I always pick on Arthur, okay? Arthur never gets to pick on me that much. He does it every once in a while. I'm going to give you an open mic right now. Okay, because people say, Darren, you ask the craziest questions, or you do what is something that Darren did back in the day that you still sit back and say, that was crazy, but he pulled it off, or that was crazy and he had no business doing it, or anything? I don't care what it is, but there's got to be something. And if you don't know anything, just tell me. I don't know, but what do you recall? And Alan Power will like this segment, I'm sure.
I'm sure he will. I won't mention names, but I will say that getting caught up, okay, when we love the music and we're also working in this industry. So that can be a dangerous combination, but I had watched it all my life. And I don't know, maybe there was a frustration, but it wasn't like I wanted to go out and pick a bone. I don't know that Darren wanted to go out and pick a bone, but it was a legitimate, I still to this day, people were upset with you and me for going along with it. But I will still say, I think it was a valid question, because in the heart of the fan, in the heart of the one who loves this version of a quartet or this version of a group, an inevitable change comes and something happens. But sometimes it feels like those changes come way too fast. And it's like, for goodness gracious, the Glenn and George stayed together for so many years. They, and the Christian life tells us to work out our differences. At some point, I think we went on the air after a hot sound had just hit the Southern gospel world. And then it's like, just as quick as it came, it was falling apart. And I think we went on the air and says, how does this happen all the time? Just when we get a good thing going, they're going to change group members. And it's like a revolving door.
I think my part of the problem was I said, we're turning gospel music into the Jerry Springer show is what I said.
You probably said something like that. I remember weeks later, somebody came up to me and they privately, and they said, who is Darren? Like, no, really, who is he? Like, where does he come up with these questions? Because nobody had ever seen anything like Darren to challenge the status quo in gospel music. And that was probably the biggest one that I think we could have said it differently and maybe not have upset so many people, but it was a true, honest feeling that we were both having. It's like, we got a good thing going. Can we not keep it together a little longer than, a year or something? Yeah. So that's the way it felt.
That was funny. Arthur, those were the days, man.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Arthur, do you remember when Kathy Crabb used to send all the DJs T-shirts and all the kind of stuff to promote? I told her one time I wasn't going to play her stuff unless she sent me a jacket that fit me. Okay. She took it legit and called the station manager. Of course, I was 326 pounds in. So, they couldn't afford a jacket that fit me. Hey, Daniel, you know what? We could talk about this kind of stuff for hours. We could sit on here and burn 2 or 3 days, but people's only going to listen for so long. But, man, thank you once again, for being a part of it and being with us. And thank you for what you've done. And I want to say thank you to my friend Barry Armstrong for finding you so many years ago. And thank you to my friend Brian Sanders, who's been a guest on this show, who got me involved in gospel music. That's our common denominator.
Yeah, a crazy small world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is for getting you involved in it. And,
right.
Great job, man. And we'll talk to you soon. Fair enough.
We've had some great memories all the way around. Thank you, guys.
Daniel, I want to thank you from an artist standpoint. Just what a great job you've done with excellence. And, I'm excited to see what God has in store for you coming up, and I know it's gonna blow our minds. And I love he's in the mind blowing business, and I'm excited for you. And God bless you. Thank you for your faithfulness and continued work.
Well, Paul Heil said it best: the greatest music in the world, the greatest message in the world.
But my voice changed, and I told that story at a Carmen concert, and it was a very sudden change, and it was quick and thankfully not awkward. I didn't go through that period of squeaky voice. It went from voice soprano on a Friday, and by Saturday and Sunday it was down in the bass tone. And so God gave me this voice, and I'm going to continue to use it. And I will continue working in radio, in Christian radio, with Southern gospel music. That is my goal. That is my desire, to work with churches to keep spreading the gospel of Jesus. And so let me say my goodbyes this way. We've had great memories. We've had laughter. We've had sadness. We've had embarrassing moments. We've had stuff that didn't go quite as planned. And to be honest, we were betrayed for the world. We had the Morning Joyride with Daniel, Candy, and Melody. We had the Morning Joyride with Daniel, Melody, and Gabe. And then the Morning Joyride with Daniel and Melody is that constant for all these 14 years. We've had great guests drop by on the phone. We've relived those moments even today. So I got to say thanks to the staff and the leadership here at JoyFM and Positive Alternative Radio. Thanks to Candy, who will continue on here. Thanks to Gabe, who spent those times. So Melody and I have teas. This is like raising children. And then they fly out of the nest and they have their own show now. And so proud. Thanks to John for putting up with me. And maybe the roles are reversed. Sometimes I put up with him. And we have that kind of a relationship where we make each other better. Thank you, John, operations manager. Thanks to Kevin, listener engagement director around here. And Kevin has such a heart for this music. And I remember some of the first moments together, we were comparing gospel music notes. Donna, unwavering. Donna, calm carpenter. They say I'm calm. If I'm calm, it's only because Donna's calm. Paula Farnsworth. If you have ever talked to Paula, you know that the Lord has given that woman a gift of gifts, and that is for people. And I love Paula. Gray, I told you we have 2 Grays at JoyFM. Now, what are the odds? And the GRAY Gray is working with our business underwriting and our business development, and pray for his mama right now, undergoing some emergency procedure. And he's not standing here at the moment, but his heart is with us. We are thankful for Gray, Grey, that's Gray Hager, who is our classics historian here at JoyFM, for the gospel music that we love, that really gave us the foundation of where we're at today. For Shelley has been on the air, Shelley's been off the air, Shelley has been at concerts, Shelley has been on the phone. There's not much Shelley hasn't done around here. And I can just say to Shelley, welcome back home. And I think emphasis on home for Shelley. To Luann Frater, thank you for never taking no for an answer. Thank you to Doug Hanna, Teresa Mills, voice of comfort. I'll say Rhonda Lacey, Adam McCain. Another, when you get some dynamic duos, they become inseparable. You got Candy and Gabe, you got Rhonda and Adam, you got Daniel and Melody. We've had some good times together. When you find something that works, you stick with it. And that's fun to watch. Adam McCain was part of this team in a big way not long after I came. Thanks to great volunteers like Brian Amon, Gabe Barnett. Of course, the big voice guy, I've already acknowledged him once. That's John Young, good friend of mine. This is all here because of a dream, because of faith. And that step of faith began with the Baker family. I'm going to talk about them in a moment. But there's an organization, a nonprofit called Positive Alternative Radio. I got to say thanks to people like Randy Pierce, Derek Withrow, Robin Porterfield, Stephanie Clements, Kayla Sanders. Oh my goodness. If you knew her way with words, she makes us shy. For Doug Day, for Megan Billingsley, for David Hodges. And on a day like we just came through yesterday, if you're listening to Joy FM still on the air during any kind of storm, it's thanks to the engineering mind and just the get out there and get her done mentality behind David. Thanks to Frankie Morey for believing in all of us. Thanks to Jerry Crimes. Thanks to Deborah Bourne. Of course, I got to also say thanks through all of this journey of Positive Alternative Radio until the end was Wanda Taylor, our pioneering friend, and we still mourn that loss. We miss her. We can't wait. I can't wait to hear her say, "Morning," when we all get to glory. And that's going to be a special, special reunion. Mrs. Baker, who is, I know you're not supposed to talk about ladies and their age. I got away with it with Melody. I don't know if I should dare talk about Mrs. Baker, but let me just say, this lady has a work ethic, and she and her husband started with their Social Security check back in the 80s. I'll let you do the math from there. Mrs. Baker is a trooper, and thank you. The entire board at PAR, and of course, voices that, well, in some cases you may have heard, some cases maybe you've hardly ever heard, and that would be the voice of Brian Sanders, Executive Vice President, and Eddie Baker, the President of PAR. Thank you for giving us, like, tracks, infrastructure to roll on, with the Lord guiding, a wonderful opportunity of a mission to accomplish. And boy, this is a great mission. It's a great mission. It's in my heart. So even if my time is ending here, the mission is planted deep in my heart to create and deliver experiences that inspire people to live passionate for Jesus Christ. And that's something that I think we could all strive to do, no matter what we punch in or punch out or clock in or clock out and call it a day job, right? There's Melody. I'm sitting across from her, and it's one of those moments where, do I cherish this moment and look at her in the eyes? Or do I not? Because we're going to start crying if I do. But Melody, you've remained at my side. And here it comes. I'll admit it. We've both grown old together. And yes, I'm catching up to your age after all these years. It finally started happening. I never thought it was possible. You transformed a working relationship into something deeper, from FM to fan, by adding a big A+ of a personality. And yes, that was a stretch, and that was cheesy, but it's never stopped me before. To the Lord above, who gave us all this passion to be here, a passion not only for the music, but here's the important piece of the puzzle at Joy FM, is you, our devoted listeners and supporters, the fuel of this engine. Without you, we'd be a bunch of Jesus-loving music fans in a padded, soundproof room. Instead, we built community and shared our faith together, which is why we're all still here working on until the day Jesus calls us home. We will continue to share the good news of his gospel. So my encouragement to you is to keep listening to Joy FM. Keep supporting Joy FM. Join me now in cheering on the real music about our real Savior for life, really. And the final thing I'll say is this is Joy FM.
Arthur, Daniel Britt, great guy. What do you think?
Yep, absolutely. First class.
You know what I like about him is we could take him off a gospel station. We could put him on a news talk station. We could put him on a country station. We could put him on a CCM station. We could put him on probably a top 40 station. And he's going to sound as good as any DJ out there. And he's going to do just a quality job. But he chose to hone his craft in Southern gospel music. Yeah. And if it was about money, he would have left it a long time ago because he has those pipes. And hopefully we'll hear him doing some imaging stuff from some folks and, like this is Channel 2 and that sort of thing and getting some great gigs like that. That'll be some cool stuff on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for what the Lord has in store for him. And I see some great things.
Well, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I've missed doing this past couple of weeks and I'm glad we're back at it. And
I know, me too.
Yeah, we'll get back on it next week. We're going to start getting some. You know what? We for the past 4 months or so, we've not had as many true Southern gospel artists on here. Okay.
Yeah.
How about me and you just getting some true Southern gospel artists on here?
Yeah.
And nailing that. And if some of the country folks come along, we'll plug them in. But we're going to do some. It'll be second time some of the folks have been on with us, and. People want to hear from those guys more than once in a blue moon, don't you think?
Especially now, because they're not getting to hear from them. So yeah.
That's right. There's a lot of good things happening. I mean, McCamey's legacy starting up. We didn't even talk about that. We could talk about all kind of gospel music news, and we'll talk about that next week. Arthur, got one thing to ask you before you get out of here. All righty?
Yes, sir.
What's wrong with living right anyway?
Not a thing.
You're listening to SGNP. Tell a friend, tell a family member, share this all over social media. We love you. We'll talk to you soon.
Well, we had a bunch of requests to do. This is our latest radio single. Features Jeff right here called The Chain Gang.
When God looks down where the devil reigns, he saw a whole lot of people carrying chains. They were digging a hole with their very own sin. Oh, it's gonna be the grave the devil puts them in. They were bound by hate, they were bound by greed, they were slaves to the things that they just don't need. Well, Satan got a whole lot of people working on the chain gang. Shackled to the world, carrying their guilt and shame. God saw a whole lot of people working on the chain gang. So he sent his son, and his son came to bring those.
Well, there ain't no hope down in this hole. The devil's got a hold and he won't let go. Well, I got tired and threw my shovel down. I fell to my knees there on the ground.
Well, the devil said, son, you belong to me. So I cried to the Lord, would you set me free? I don't want to die in hell. Forgive me, Lord. That's when the shackles fell.
That's when the shackles fell.
Satan got a whole lot of people working on the chain gang.
Working on the chain gang.
Shackled to the world, carrying their guilt and
Carrying the guilt and shame. But God saw a whole lot of people working on the chain gang. So he sent his son, and his son came to break those chains. God sent his son, and his son came
to break those chains.
He's gonna break those chains.
Chapman. Have you enjoyed Jeff this week?
SGNP is excited you chose to listen today. If you'd kindly leave a remark and rating in the podcast remarks section, we surely would appreciate it. Please share with a friend or family member. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, and our new website, SouthernGospelNewsPodcast.com.